I want you to picture a scene in your mind. Just really sit with the sensory details of this for a second.
Okay, set the stage.
So you are standing on a planet that looks like it was violently ripped straight out of the Cretaceous period. I mean, the air is so thick and like humid, you practically have to chew it before you breathe.
Oh, wow. Sounds miserable.
Right. And the ferns towering over you are, well, they're the size of skyscrapers, completely blocking out the sun.
Okay.
And the ground itself is vibrating under your boots. There's this deep, rhythmic thudding that shakes the water in the puddles. Because stomping through the underbrush right toward you is a reptilian apex predator.
A dinosaur.
Exactly. It is, for all intents and purposes, a massively scaled-up T-Rex, roaring with this primitive, raw fury. But and here's where the image breaks apart. Here's where your brain kind of short-circuits.
Right, the twist.
Riding on the back of this gargantuan dinosaur holding its reins is a tall, incredibly graceful, slender alien being.
Yeah.
They are clad in elegant, ancient armor that looks, I don't know, like it was grown rather than forged. And they're holding a sleek, high-tech weapon that hums with this lethal, contained energy.
It's such an arresting visual.
And the most shocking part, they aren't out here conquering the galaxy. They're out here pulling stumps or like plowing fields or protecting a local homestead.
Yeah, doing farm chores on a T-Rex.
We're talking about a highly advanced society that can best be described as, well, the dinosaur-riding Amish of the galaxy.
It is a phenomenal image. I mean, when you first encounter this faction in the source material, it genuinely feels like someone accidentally shuffled two completely different science fiction and fantasy decks together.
Completely.
You have the bleeding-edge technological supremacy of an ancient star-faring species violently mashed up against the mud, the blood, and the roaring beasts of a primitive jungle world.
Right.
But what is so fascinating about this text is that this juxtaposition isn't a joke. It's not some aesthetic quirk of a writer having fun.
No, it's deadly serious.
Exactly. That image, the hyper-advanced alien riding the mud-caked reptile, is the physical manifestation of a profoundly desperate, incredibly traumatic choice.
And that profound choice is exactly our mission for today. Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're listening to this, I know you. You are the kind of person who craves that deep foundational understanding of a universe.
You want the aha moments.
Exactly. You want the philosophical meat on the bones without getting buried under a mountain of impenetrable jargon or like meaningless trivia. You don't just want to know what these things are. You want to know why they matter.
Right.
So today we are immersing ourselves in a single, incredibly rich text detailing a faction known as the Exodites. They are a deeply isolated branch of the Eldari operating in the nightmare reality of the 41st millennium.
And it's a grim reality.
It really is. But we aren't just going to list off laser guns and cool dinosaur names, as fun as that is. We are here to explore a psychological, almost terrifyingly disciplined societal structure.
Yeah, an entire civilization that deliberately rejected its own history.
Right, turned its back on total technological supremacy and chose to live in a state of perpetual grueling hardship.
Simply to survive a self-inflicted apocalypse.
It's wild. I mean, it is arguably the ultimate survivalist story, playing out on a galactic scale over thousands of years.
It really is. When we analyze the Exodites, we aren't looking at a primitive culture that simply never figured out how to build a spaceship.
No, they know exactly how.
Right? They have the blueprints. They have the intellectual capacity to build one by lunchtime, and they actively, fiercely choose to walk in the mud instead.
It's a society built on intentional, unyielding self-denial. And, to truly grasp the sheer gravity of that daily choice, you have to look at the psychological terror of what they're running away from.
You have to understand the trauma that makes the mud look so appealing.
Exactly. We have to establish the starting line. Because if you see someone willingly throw themselves into a freezing, violent river, your first thought is that they're crazy.
Sure.
But if you look back and see that the bank they just jumped from is covered in flesh-eating fire.
Suddenly the freezing river makes perfect sense.
Right. So let's rewind the clock. Long before an event our sources simply call the Fall, the ancient Eldari Empire was a society of unimaginable power.
And we really need to quantify unimaginable here.
Yeah, because we throw that word around a lot in sci-fi. But this was a civilization that had fundamentally conquered the material universe. They had eliminated want.
No disease, no hunger.
No scarcity, like no manual labor, no struggle for resources. Everything was automated by sophisticated psychic technology.
They achieve complete mastery over the physical realm.
Yeah.
And honestly, that is where the danger actually begins.
How so? Like, utopia sounds great.
Well, when a society reaches true post-scarcity, when literally every material need is met instantly, when drones and automated systems handle all industry, when the biological struggle for survival is essentially bred out of your daily existence, the mind needs a new frontier.
And something to do.
Right. It needs somewhere to go. And we have to factor in the biology of the Eldari here.
Yeah.
They are a deeply psychic, hypersensitive species.
Right. They don't feel things the way we do.
Not at all. Their nervous systems operate at a fidelity that human beings cannot even comprehend. They experience joy, sorrow, pleasure, and pain on a spectrum so intense that a human mind would likely shatter if it felt a fraction of it.
Wow.
So you take that level of biological sensitivity, you combine it with absolute civilization-wide boredom, and you give them completely limitless resources.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. The culture has no choice but to turn inward.
And according to the text, that inward turn got dark incredibly fast. I mean, without the struggle to survive, they started seeking out new sensations.
Which sounds innocent enough at first.
Yeah. Maybe you make more complex art or write wilder music.
Sure.
But eventually they exhausted the normal spectrum of experience. They sank into these massive, society-wide, hedonistic cults.
They really push the limits.
We are talking about a spiral into utter decadence, exploring the darkest, most violent, most extreme limits of physical and emotional sensation.
And here is the critical piece of the puzzle. Because the Eldari are a psychic species, their emotions don't just stay in their heads.
Right, they leak out.
This is a crucial mechanical point for understanding their universe. In this setting, there's a parallel dimension called the warp.
The warp.
Yeah. And the best way to understand the warp is to view it as a mirror dimension made entirely of psychic energy.
Okay, so it reflects what's happening in the real world.
Exactly. It reflects the emotions, thoughts, and psychic echoes of beings in the real physical universe. If the real universe is filled with peace, the warp is calm. If the real universe is filled with rage, the warp becomes violent.
Oh, I see where this is going. So you have trillions of hypersensitive Eldari across an entire galactic empire, all plunging into the most extreme, depraved, violent excesses imaginable.
For centuries.
For centuries. And their collective emotional output is flooding into this mirror dimension.
And that sheer volume of concentrated, intense psychic energy began to pool together. It started to coalesce.
They were building something.
The Eldaris were quite literally gestating a god of their own destruction through their collective, unchecked indulgence.
That is terrifying.
It really is. This coalescing energy would eventually violently rip its way into existence as a sentient demonic entity known as Slaanesh.
Slaanesh, right.
But long before that final catastrophic birth, the storm clouds were gathering in the warp, and the psychic atmosphere of the Eldari Empire was becoming poisoned.
Which brings us to a tiny, deeply unpopular minority within this empire, the Doomsayers.
Yes, the ones who saw it coming.
Right.
Yeah.
These were individuals who looked at the trajectory of their society, felt the shifting currents in the warp, and just did the math. They realized that this massive cultural shift wasn't just a phase.
It wasn't a generational rebellion.
No, it was a terminal illness. They saw the birth of this dark god coming, and they understood with absolute chilling clarity that their society was irreparably doomed.
The psychological burden on these individuals would have been unfathomable. I mean, you possess the absolute certainty of an impending apocalypse, but you live in a society that is too busy gorging itself on pleasure to care.
It's maddening.
The sources make a point of highlighting how marginalized they were. They were mocked.
Oh, totally. They were treated as paranoid eccentrics, like killjoys trying to ruin the eternal party.
Exactly.
I always try to put these sweeping sci-fi concepts into relatable terms. So imagine being the only sober person at an epic, out-of-control, multi-mansion party.
I love this analogy.
You're walking through the halls, and everyone you love is having the time of their lives, totally lost in the moment.
Just completely unchecked.
Right. But you suddenly realize that the foundations of the house are packed with dynamite, and you can smell the fuse burning. You stand on a table and shout, "The house is going to explode! We have to leave right now!"
And they just laugh at you.
Yeah. They hand you another drink, they pat you on the back, and they tell you to lighten up. The sheer suffocating isolation of that realization. At a certain point, you realize you cannot save them.
You just have to walk out the door alone.
You have to walk out.
It is a devastating analogy because it captures the isolation, but, we must also layer in the profound grief of the action. Walking out that door meant leaving behind their ancestral home, their culture, their grand history.
And the vast majority of their extended families who refused to listen.
Right. A vital detail in our source text is that the doomsayers did not stay to fight the decline.
They didn't try to fix it.
No. They didn't form a resistance movement. They didn't try to violently overthrow the hedonistic cults to cure their society.
Why not, though? Wouldn't you try to save your home?
They recognized that the rot had permeated the very bedrock of their civilization. The momentum of the decadence was too massive. Trying to fight it would have been as futile as trying to punch a tsunami.
Punch a tsunami.
Yeah.
That puts it in perspective. So they gathered whatever supplies they could, whoever would listen to reason, and they fled.
The Exodus.
Right. They departed the unimaginably wealthy, technologically miraculous core worlds of the Eldari Empire, and they headed out into the deep, dark fringes of the galaxy. This migration is what our sources call the Exodus.
A fitting name.
But it begs the question, right? Where do you go when you're fleeing the center of the universe?
Where do you hide?
They aimed for planets known as the Maiden Worlds. Now, a Maiden World, according to the lore, is a planet that was seeded and terraformed by the ancient Eldari Empire thousands of years prior.
They were designed to be absolute paradises.
But they were never settled, which is crazy to me.
Well, that detail alone speaks volumes about the psychology of the pre-fall Eldari.
How so?
For millennia, they had these pristine, beautiful, perfectly balanced ecological paradises just waiting for them across the stars, but they never bothered to inhabit them.
Because they were too busy partying.
Essentially, yes. The core worlds had become too comfortable. I mean, why leave the center of galactic culture, where every possible whim is instantly gratified by machines, to go live a quiet life on a distant pastoral planet?
I guess that makes sense. It's like having a cabin in the woods that you never visit because your penthouse is too nice.
Exactly. The Maiden Worlds were essentially forgotten monuments to the Empire's earlier, more ambitious exploratory days. They were dusty museum exhibits of what the Eldari used to value.
Wow. So the Exodites arrive, they step off their ships onto these untouched, verdant paradises. They are the last of their kind, completely untainted by the madness that is consuming their home.
They've made it.
They have escaped. But man, the emotional whiplash must have been catastrophic.
Oh, undeniably.
You are standing in a perfectly engineered Eden, breathing clean air, but the only reason you are standing there is because everything you have ever known, everything your species ever built, is actively burning to the ground behind you.
The survivor's gold had to be a foundational element of their new culture.
It had to be.
It undoubtedly shaped everything that came next. You are functionally orphans of the galaxy, carrying the crushing weight of knowing you were right all along.
Yeah.
But we must examine what they did next. Because human instinct, and likely Eldari instinct, upon surviving a trauma of that magnitude, is to immediately seek comfort.
Absolutely. You escape the apocalypse, you land in Eden, you unpack your advanced technology, and you build a safe, comfortable fortress to heal in.
But that is precisely what the Exodites did not do.
Right. Because arriving on the Maiden Worlds was only step one of survival. They looked at the smoking ruin of their empire and realized something terrifying. The environment wasn't the problem.
The technology wasn't the problem.
No, their own psychology was the problem.
Yes.
If they settled on a paradise world and used their hyper-advanced technology to build automated cities and make life easy, they would just be starting a stopwatch.
Give it a few centuries, and they would recreate the exact same conditions of boredom and indulgence that birthed the Dark God in the first place.
Exactly. They identified that the true existential threat wasn't an invading army, it was comfort.
They coined a concept regarding the corrupting convenience of technology.
Corrupting convenience. I love that phrase.
It's very descriptive. The Exodites realized that the moment you use a machine to plow a field simply so you can have an extra hour of leisure time,
Yeah.
you have taken the first insidious step on the road back to apocalypse.
Okay, I really want to dig into this concept of corrupting convenience because my first reaction when reading this was to push back.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. I mean, I can totally understand the recovering addict analogy, right? Throwing away the key to the liquor cabinet because the temptation of alcohol is too dangerous.
Sure.
But we aren't just talking about giving up luxury yachts or like virtual reality entertainment. We are talking about fundamental life-saving technology.
Yes, they gave up everything.
The Exodites have the blueprints for medical technology that could cure any disease. They have the ability to build climate-controlled shelters so their children don't freeze in a harsh winter.
Right.
They could build automated harvesters so their people don't break their backs. Or worse, starve during a bad crop yield. But they just refuse to use them.
I struggle with where the line is between necessary spiritual rigor and just, well, masochistic, pointless suffering.
I get that. It is the most challenging aspect of their philosophy to accept. But you have to view it through the lens of a species whose emotional capacity is a lethal weapon.
A lethal weapon. Okay, explain that.
For a human, an hour of leisure time is just a chance to take a nap or read a book.
Right.
For an Eldari, an hour of leisure time, compounded over centuries of an incredibly long lifespan, creates a vacuum in the mind.
A vacuum.
And that vacuum will inevitably be filled by the pursuit of sensation. They believe that hard physical labor, sweating, struggling, fighting the elements, plowing a stubborn field by hand, is not a punishment. It is a vital, deliberate anchor for the soul.
So the exhaustion is the point. Exactly. When your physical body is pushed to its absolute limits, just to ensure you have food for the winter, your mind simply does not have the surplus energy required to drift into the psychic extremes that doomed their ancestors.
Wow.
The hardship is the medicine. The struggle against nature is the immune system of their society.
That's a great way to put it, an immune system.
They aren't suffering pointlessly, they are suffering strategically. They look at a piece of convenience technology the way you or I might look at a highly radioactive piece of metal.
Like, sure, it glows nicely and maybe keeps you warm.
But it will inevitably mutate and destroy you from the inside out.
Okay, that makes sense philosophically, but mechanically, I ran into a massive roadblock in the source text here.
Oh, what's that?
Let's call it the ammo paradox.
The ammo paradox. I like it. Let's hear it.
So the text establishes that they completely reject industrialization, right? They live these grueling, agrarian, feudal lives. They farm, they hunt, they build by hand. But later in the text, it explicitly states that their warriors, the Dragon Knights, ride into battle wielding shuriken catapults.
Ah, yes.
Now, a shuriken catapult is a hyper-advanced energy weapon that fires a storm of monomolecular disks at blinding speeds. Building a weapon like that, and more importantly, manufacturing the ammunition and power cells for it, requires massive industrial infrastructure.
You think so?
Right. You need deep core mining, refineries, automated assembly lines, microelectronics. You can't just forge a monomolecular energy weapon on a blacksmith's anvil next to the pig trough.
No, you certainly cannot.
So how do they possess this technology without the industry they so violently reject?
It's a brilliant catch, and it highlights a deeply misunderstood mechanism of Eldari technology. The Exodites do not have smokestack factories or automated assembly lines.
Okay.
The Eldari do not build technology the way humans do. They grow it, and they sing it into existence.
Wait, sing it? Like with their voices?
Yeah, well, psychically. The foundation of all Eldari technology is a psychoplastic material known as wraithbone.
Right.
It is a material drawn from the warp and shaped entirely by psychic discipline. The Exodites retain a handful of highly specialized artisans, often referred to in the wider lore as bone singers.
Bone singers. That's incredibly evocative.
These artisans don't use wrenches and foundries. They use intense, grueling psychic concentration, a form of telepathic music, to coerce the wraithbone into the shape of a weapon or a tool or ammunition.
So the creation of the technology itself is still an act of immense personal, physical, and mental discipline. It's artisanal, localized creation, not mass industrialization.
Precisely. To sing a shuriken catapult into existence takes an agonizing amount of mental focus and spiritual energy.
So it's not convenient at all.
Not even a little. A single artisan is carefully crafting a necessary tool for the defense of the world. It requires no automated factories, no widespread pollution, and no societal shift toward mechanized convenience.
The creation of the weapon perfectly aligns with their philosophy of rigorous personal effort.
They have the advanced gear, but every single piece of it was born from sweat and immense psychic strain.
Okay, that completely bridges the logical gap for me.
Yeah.
Every aspect of their lives, even their weapons manufacturing, is a heavy burden designed to keep them grounded.
Absolutely everything.
But that leads us directly to the next major question.
Which is?
If they are putting all this immense physical and mental effort into just staying alive in the dirt, if their entire existence is a desperate struggle against the elements and predators, what happens when they lose?
Mortality.
Right, because physical bodies break down. Even an Eldari with a lifespan of centuries eventually dies. And on these untamed, hyper-dangerous worlds, death probably comes violently and suddenly quite often.
It's daily reality.
So if an Exodite farmer dies of exhaustion in the field, what happens to their soul? Because we established earlier that Slanesh, the dark god born from their ancestors' sins, is just waiting in the warp to consume any unprotected Eldari soul the second it leaves the body.
This is where the Exodite culture transforms from a simple agrarian society into a deeply metaphysical one.
Metaphysical how?
Well, for the Exodites, the afterlife is not some abstract, hopeful concept of clouds and harps.
Okay.
The afterlife is a tangible piece of planetary infrastructure. We need to examine the mechanism of the world's spirit.
Oh, this was my absolute favorite part of the source material. It is such a wild concept. Our sources describe the world spirit as a localized infinity circuit.
Yes.
Now, for those unfamiliar, an infinity circuit is essentially a massive psychic containment matrix.
It's a soul repository.
Right. It's a repository that holds the souls of the dead so they are hidden and protected from Slanesh in the warp. But the Exodites don't put this matrix in a giant metal server room. They don't hide it in a heavily armored space station.
No, they do something much more integrated.
They literally weave this psychic matrix into the actual geology of the planet itself. They construct massive networks of menhirs, towering obelisks, and ancient stone circles crafted from psychoactive crystal.
The architectural and ecological implications of that choice are stunning.
It's basically a planetary-scale mystical hard drive.
That's a very accurate, modern way to think about it.
Instead of uploading your consciousness to a cloud server or plugging it into a mainframe on a spaceship, you are downloading your eternal soul into the actual dirt, rocks, and crystal structures of your home planet.
You become part of the world.
But mechanically, how does that transfer actually happen? I mean, when a farmer dies in the mud, does his soul just seep into the groundwater?
No, the mechanism is highly deliberate and requires immediate action. Every Eldari, regardless of their faction, wears a psychoreceptive gem known as a spirit stone or a way stone.
Oh, spirit stone?
Yes, it is attuned to their unique psychic frequency. At the exact moment of biological death, before the soul can slip into the warp where Slanesh is waiting, the spirit stone acts as an emergency vacuum.
It sucks the soul inside.
Exactly. It traps it safely within the gem.
So you have this glowing gem containing the consciousness of the deceased.
Yes. And the surviving family or clan members must then take that spirit stone and physically bring it to one of the menhirs or crystal obelisks scattered across the planet's surface. They perform a ritual to plug the stone into the psychoactive crystal network, and the soul is thereby downloaded, flowing out of the gem and merging into the collective consciousness of the world's spirit deep within the planet's core.
The ecological poetry of that is just staggering. Think about how that changes your daily relationship with the natural world.
It changes everything.
Imagine you are that Exodite farmer pushing a heavy plow through the dirt. At the edge of your field sits a towering menhir of psychoactive crystal, humming faintly with ambient energy.
Yes.
You know, for a biological fact that your great-grandparents, the founders of your clan, the heroes who tamed this valley, their consciousness, their very souls, are alive inside that stone.
You aren't just farming dirt to survive. You are actively tending to the physical, geological manifestation of your family tree.
Wow.
The craft world Eldari, their starfaring cousins, live on sterile manufactured ships, preserving their souls in artificial, highly regulated wraithbone cores. The craft world is a life raft.
But the Exodites...
The Exodites have quite literally planted their souls in the soil. They don't just live on nature. They are a part of it in life, and they permanently merge with it in death.
But that poetry comes with a terrifying vulnerability, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you are on a spaceship and a hostile alien fleet shows up, you can fire up the engines and fly your life raft away from danger. A planet cannot run.
A planet is stationary.
Right. If a hostile force invades a maiden world and decides to strip mine the crust or orbital bombard the surface, the world spirit is shattered.
And if those crystal networks are destroyed, the souls of every single ancestor who ever lived and died on that world are instantly ejected into the warp.
Thrown directly into the mouth of the apocalypse they spent their entire lives running from.
It is the ultimate double-edged sword. Their connection to the land gives them spiritual purity, but it makes their commitment to planetary defense absolute.
There is no evacuation plan.
None whatsoever. There is no retreating to fight another day. If the ground falls, eternity is lost.
And because of that terrifying reality, they require a social structure that is perfectly, ruthlessly designed to fiercely protect that specific piece of real estate.
You cannot just be a peaceful, pacifist farmer when the literal souls of your family are trapped in the rocks and the galaxy is full of horrors trying to crack those rocks open.
Which naturally leads us to the defenders of those rocks. We arrive at the image we started with at the top of the deep dive.
The Dragon Knights.
Yes. To protect these worlds, Exodite society is structured entirely around martial clans. These are fiercely independent territorial groups, but they are highly hierarchical.
They have to be.
Right. You have local tribes that swear oaths of loyalty to ruling tribes who then answer to an overarching planetary king. It is a world of aristocratic noble houses where honor, reputation, and martial prowess are paramount.
And the warrior elite of these noble houses.
They are the Dragon Knights.
The Dragon Knights are masters of mounted combat, and they ride the massive indigenous reptiles native to these maiden worlds.
Which is just the coolest visual.
It really is. The sources detail a wide variety of these beasts, commonly referred to as dragons. They range from horse-sized, highly agile raptors used for fast flanking maneuvers and scouting.
All the way up to gargantuan carnosaurs.
Exactly. Massive bipedal apex predators used as heavy shot cavalry to shatter enemy lines.
And while they are riding these roaring beasts into combat, they are wielding those advanced Eldari weapons we discussed earlier, like the shuriken catapults or long, energized lances.
It's an incredible combination.
But, I was reading this section of the source, and it felt so contradictory at first.
How so?
Well, we have established this deeply survivalist, farm-based culture, a culture entirely built around humility, hard work, and rejecting excess.
Yes.
How does a society of humble dirt farmers logically develop a high society, honor-obsessed, aristocratic nobility? Usually, aristocracy is a product of excess wealth and leisure time, the exact things they're avoiding.
Yes, a very logical question. It seems contradictory until you view it through the lens of survival mechanism.
Okay, lay it out for me.
In a hyper-violent environment, where every single clan is heavily armed, independent, and fiercely territorial, you need a system that prevents society from devolving into constant, chaotic civil war.
Because civil war would leave them vulnerable.
Exactly. If the clans are fighting each other over grazing land or water rights, the world spirit is left undefended from off-world threats.
Ah, I see.
A rigid code of honor, strict clan hierarchies, and formal, sworn oaths of fealty provide the necessary social glue to keep the violence structured.
So feudalism here isn't born out of greed or a desire to oppress the lower classes. It's born out of absolute necessity. The honor code dictates the rules of engagement so they don't accidentally annihilate themselves.
Furthermore, this nobility is not the decadent aristocracy we picture in human history.
Right. They aren't lounging around.
Not at all. To be a lord in Exodite society does not mean you sit on a velvet cushion in a high tower sipping imported wine and collecting taxes.
That would be the very definition of the Slaneshi decadence they are fleeing.
Precisely. Exodite nobility is violently meritocratic. It is based entirely on martial prowess, survival skills, and the willingness to bleed for the land.
So the king actually fights.
A planetary king doesn't send troops to die for him. He maintains his title by being the first one to charge into the enemy line on the back of the largest carnosaur.
And we really have to talk about taming those carnosaurs.
Oh, absolutely. It's a crucial part of their culture.
Because, again, if I'm a pragmatist looking at planetary defense, even if I accept the artisanal wreathbones singing, why not just sing a hover tank into existence?
A tank seems more practical.
Yeah. A hover tank has thicker armor, it doesn't need to be fed tons of meat, and it won't panic and try to eat its driver if it gets spooked by artillery fire. Logically, why ride a dinosaur?
Because riding the dinosaur is the ultimate expression of their philosophy.
Okay, how so?
We must remember that all Eldari are latent psychers. They possess inherent telepathic abilities. Taming a carnosaur is not like breaking a horse with a carrot and a stick.
It's not just animal husbandry.
No, it requires an individual knight to venture out into the lethal jungles alone, track down a 3-ton apex predator, and forge a brutal telepathic bond of absolute dominance.
Wow.
It is a grueling, exhausting, life-or-death battle of wills.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. A hover tank makes you complacent. You sit in an armored box and press buttons.
Exactly.
But constantly suppressing the predatory, violent instincts of a massive reptile with your bare mind while simultaneously steering it through a battlefield and aiming a weapon, that requires absolute, unbroken mental discipline.
It leaves absolutely no room for the mind to wander. You cannot daydream about luxury or indulgence when you are holding the psychic reins of a beast that will immediately snap you in half if your focus slips for a microsecond.
That is intense.
The mastery of the beast is the physical reflection of the mastery of the self. The intense mental strain required to be a Dragon Knight anchors the soul just as effectively as pushing a plow, if not more so.
It is the perfect marriage of necessary military might and essential spiritual rigor.
Indeed it is.
Okay, so we have painted this incredibly vivid picture. We have these fierce, deeply rooted, dinosaur-riding feudal lords. They are fiercely guarding their planetary crystal hard drives, completely committed to their isolation and their brutal way of life.
That's a very complete image.
It would be really easy to conclude that they are just a lost tribe, completely siloed from the rest of the galaxy, sitting in the mud while the universe passes them by.
But our sources make a very specific point to clarify that this is not true.
Right. They are actually woven into a much larger cosmic tapestry. They are an active part of the wider Eldari diaspora.
They are isolationists in their philosophy, but they are not entirely isolated geographically or politically.
How does that work? If they don't have spaceships, how are they connected?
The maiden worlds are connected to the rest of the galaxy by a network of hidden webway gates.
The webway.
Yes. The webway, for context, is an ancient extra-dimensional labyrinth built by their ancestors. It allows ships and individuals to travel faster than light across the galaxy without ever having to enter the chaotic, demon-infested dimension of the warp.
So they have these doorways just sitting in the jungle.
Exactly. Because they have these gates hidden in their jungles, the Exodites do engage in limited, highly controlled trade and cultural exchange with the outside world.
So they aren't totally closed-door hermits.
No, not at all.
The sources note that they actually maintain surprisingly good relations with Eldari corsairs, who are essentially spacefaring pirates and freebooters, and their worlds act as safe havens and refuges for outcasts and rangers from the larger craft world.
It's a fascinating dynamic.
I love examining this dynamic. I naturally compare the Exodites' role in the larger Eldari race to real-world family dynamics.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
To the Asuriani, the Eldari, who live on those highly regimented, starfaring craft worlds. The Exodites are basically the weird, off-the-grid prepper cousins.
Yeah.
You know the archetype. The cousin who moved deep into the woods, built a log cabin by hand, hunts for their own food, and refuses to use Wi-Fi because they think society is collapsing. The craft worlders view the Exodites as rustic, simple-minded, and perhaps a bit socially backwards.
The irony of that rustic label is almost painful.
How so?
Well, the craftworlders look down their noses at the Exodites for living in the dirt and riding animals, entirely forgetting that it was the craftworlders' ancestors whose reliance on high society and technology literally birthed a dark god that destroyed their empire.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The Exodites were the only ones who actually possessed the wisdom to leave before the fire started.
So the craft worlders are essentially living on lifeboats, mocking the people who had the foresight to build a house on solid ground.
That is exactly the dynamic. But this family dynamic gets even more fascinating when you examine how different, specific factions view the Exodites. Take the craft world of Samhan, for example.
Right. Samhan is described as a more nomadic, tribal, slightly wilder culture among the stars. And our sources note that Samhan actually sends their youth to the Exodite worlds to participate in rites of passage.
It highlights a deep-seated psychological need within the Eldari race.
How do you mean?
You have these youths who have lived their entire lives on a sterile manufactured spaceship. They have never felt actual wind, never touched unrefined soil, never faced a predator that wasn't a holographic training simulation.
That sounds so stifling.
For their coming-of-age ritual, they are dropped onto a hyper-dangerous jungle planet and told to survive alongside the Dragon Knights.
It is such a universal human trope. The highly advanced, somewhat disconnected society romanticizing the pastoral, sending their teenagers out into the wilderness to find themselves or seek authenticity in nature.
It proves that despite their technological supremacy, even the starfaring Eldari secretly recognize that the Exodites have retained something vital.
They have held on to something raw, real, and undeniably authentic that the sterile craft worlds have lost.
It is the eternal romanticization of the rugged frontiersman by the comfortable empire.
But while Samhan views them as a spiritual proving ground, the most politically significant and perhaps most dangerous relationship the Exodites have is with the craft world of Bieltan.
Bieltan is a major player.
Bieltan is deeply, fundamentally militant. Their entire cultural and societal focus is geared toward warfare, xenophobia, and the eventual violent reconquest of the galaxy to restore the ancient Ildari Empire to its former glory.
A very aggressive faction.
Now, I was reading the source on Bealtan, and I fully assumed they would despise the Exodites.
It would seem logical.
Right. If Bealtan is all about military supremacy and reclaiming the stars, wouldn't they look at these pacifist, isolationist dirt farmers and see them as a massive disappointment, an embarrassment to the legacy of the Empire?
But the text says the exact opposite.
It does. They actually view them as the holy grail of their civilization.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. Why does the most aggressive military faction revere the farmers?
Because Bealtan understands a fundamental truth of empire building. You cannot build a lasting empire on a fleet of lifeboats.
Oh, that's a great point.
The craft worlds are impressive, but they are artificial, degrading, and ultimately finite. They're drifting through the void. Bealtan looks at the Exodite maiden worlds, and they don't see backwards farmers. They see soil.
They see actual ground.
They see the only pure, untainted, uncorrupted Eldari ground left in the entire universe.
They see the foundation.
Exactly. They see the bedrock. To Bealtan, the Exodites are not a relic of the past. They are the necessary seeds of the future.
So they protect them.
If the Eldari Empire is ever going to rise again and reclaim the galaxy, it has to grow from the ground up. It has to be rooted in a planet. Because of this ideological reverence, Bealtan has positioned itself as the unofficial, hyper-violent guardian of the Maiden Worlds.
Wow.
If an alien species, be it human, orc, or otherwise, attempts to invade or colonize an Exodite world, Bealtan will violently mobilize their entire military apparatus to annihilate the threat and defend the planet.
So, to Bealtan, the Exodites are the sacred hometown that must be protected at all costs, even if the hometown doesn't necessarily want their help. Yeah. It's so compelling. The militant faction looks at the heavily armed, dinosaur-riding farmers and sees the ultimate salvation of their race. It speaks to this profound, universal idea that true strength doesn't come from the decadent top-down. It is forged from the grueling, rooted ground up.
The craft worlds are just holding their breath, trying not to drown.
And the Exodites have actually learned how to breathe underwater.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of the source material we have examined today. The text implies a profound paradox.
A paradox. Walk me through it.
The Exodites embody both the lost, pure potential of the Eldari species and their greatest, most terrifying fear.
Right.
They are the doomsayers who saw the terrifying truth of their own nature and ran from it.
But in the act of running, in the act of burying their hands in the dirt and refusing the comforts of their past, they inadvertently became the only ones carrying the living, uncorrupted legacy of what the ancient empire used to be, long before the rot of decadence set in.
It is a grim, beautiful, incredibly stark reminder of the stakes in this universe.
Survival in the 41st millennium isn't just a matter of having the biggest laser cannons, the strongest energy shields, or the most advanced spaceships. Sometimes, true survival means having the discipline to make a terrible, agonizing choice every single day.
The Exodites chose to sacrifice a glorious, comfortable, star-spanning past for a harsh, painful, uncertain, and grueling future.
They quite literally gave up the stars to save their souls. They locked themselves in the mud, fighting for their lives against apex predators, simply so their minds wouldn't wander and pull them into the abyss.
They are a people who managed to secure their future by permanently trapping themselves in a meticulously manufactured past.
And that leads us to the end of our deep dive today. We have unpacked the psychological trauma of the Doomsayers and their flight to the Maiden Worlds.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We've examined the incredibly rigorous philosophy of rejecting corrupting convenience and how even their advanced weaponry is sung into existence through grueling personal effort.
The world spirit.
Right. We looked at the beautiful, terrifying vulnerability of a world spirit woven into the planetary rocks, the absolute necessity of the honor-bound dragon knights forging telepathic bonds with carnosaurs, and the complex, fascinating web of galactic family dynamics that view them as everything from backwards hermits to the sacred saviors of the race.
But as always, we don't want to just leave you with a neat summary of the facts.
No, we want to leave you with a question, something provocative to chew on as you go about your day.
If we look at the totality of the Exodite existence, here is a civilization whose ultimate and, frankly, only defense mechanism against spiritual and literal corruption relies entirely on self-imposed hardship.
Right.
They rely on eternal stagnation. They actively hide from the wider universe, burying their heads, their technology, and their very souls in the dirt of isolated planets.
Let's go.
And so we must ask, is their survival an actual victory? Or did they simply use their immense intellect to build a highly secure, dinosaur-guarded, culturally stagnant prison just to keep the end of the world at bay?
That's a great question.
By refusing to grow, refusing to risk, and refusing to embrace the stars, have they actually saved their species, or are they merely pausing their extinction?
Oh, that is a heavy one to walk away with. A highly secure, dinosaur-guarded prison is simply not dying the same thing as truly living. I absolutely love that framing. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. As always, keep questioning the information around you, keep looking for the mechanical how and the philosophical why behind the what, and we will see you on the next deep dive.